I met Anais on a platform at Gare de Lyon the day the trains were late and everyone forgot how to stand in a line. She wore a red scarf and held the kind of canvas tote journalists carry, full of folded newspapers, a recorder, and cables that looked like gilt. I'd flown in from Sarajevo for a conference in Lyon, then dodged it after breakfast. I don't go to conferences. I follow stories. The one that brought me to France was a string of disappearances near a hydroelectric project in the Vercors. Anais had been emailing me for weeks, insisting the pattern was real. "It's not the mountains," she wrote. "It's the paperwork." When the delays pushed our train to the afternoon, she suggested we rent a car and drive. "It's 3 hours," she said, pointing at the map on her phone. "We'll be there before dark if Grenoble traffic behaves." We left Paris under bruised clouds and a bright white arc of airplane trail. Outside Fontainebleau, the highway divided tall pines and fields where horses grazed behind electric fences. I drove, because Anais confessed a license expired during lockdown and never renewed. She talked the whole way, her voice quick, full of names. A subcontractor that went bankrupt, a safety inspection rubber-stamped, a missing engineer whose last text to his sister said, simply, "Stop asking." "What do you think happened to him?" I asked. "I think he signed something that can't exist," she said. "And then he tried to unsign it." By the time we reached the valley, the sky had cleared into that harsh winter sunlight that makes everything look honest. The dam sat behind a wire fence, poured concrete and steel braces with yellow warning signs in neat triplicate. A security van crawled along the fence line like a patient dog. On the hill above, a village gathered around a church and a school with blue shutters. We parked near the boulangerie because hunger is practical and curiosity works better with sugar. Inside, the baker watched us read a notice board pinned with bright pushpins. 3 missing posters, 2 hikers, 1 engineer. The hikers had smiles lit by summer. The engineer's photo was in grayscale, taken from a conference badge. "You're not from here," the baker said. "No," Anais said, and smiled in a way that asked for secrets. "We're journalists." He shrugged. "Then you'll want the mayor or the gendarmerie, or Madame Lenore. She sees everything." Madame Lenore turned out to be the woman arranging tulips outside the florist. She had a cigarette balanced on the curve of her lips, hands stained green. When Anais introduced us, she nodded toward the dam. "They work all night, sometimes with the lights off," she said. "You hear trucks, but you don't see them. My husband says it's deliveries. I say deliveries don't hide." "Trucks where?" I asked. "There's an old forestry road above the gorge. Blocked by a chain," she said, flicking ash into a watering can. "The chain's never locked." We drove up past the last farmhouse until the tarmac turned to gravel and the gravel to mud. The chain lay slack across 2 posts. Below us the dam's spillway roared. I stepped out. The cold smelled of rust and wet stone. In the trees someone had hammered a new sign, "Atches interdit." "Danger." Anais pulled a folder from her tote and handed me a photocopy. It was a site plan. Someone had circled a rectangle beyond the marked access, a rectangle labeled simply, "Annex 3." Anais tapped it twice, like knocking on a door. We came back after dark, because that's when people who hide things forget to pretend. The village emptied early. Shutters closed like eyelids against the cold. We left the car on the lane below the chain and climbed with our headlamps off, letting the moon thread silver through the branches. Somewhere down in the gorge, water thundered like a crowd at a match. At the crest, the forest road leveled out and ran behind the hill like a quiet corridor. We found faint tracks, not tires but something wider, the herringbone imprint of treads. We walked a kilometre in near silence, stopping only when a metal rattle carried through the trees. Anais touched my sleeve and pointed. Ahead, around a bend, a white rectangle pulsed, reverse lights blinking on and off. We crouched behind a pile of logs. A truck emerged, cab blacked out, the company name taped over with brown paper. Its trailer had the low, armored look of a generator hauler. A man jumped down to unhook the chain that lay across the road. He didn't look around. He moved like someone who knew he had the valley to himself. The truck rolled past. When it vanished into the trees, we exhaled. "What are they bringing in?" Anais whispered. "Or taking out," I said. When the road was empty again, we followed the tracks until the trees thinned and the ground fell away. Below us, a warehouse sat half buried in the slope, concrete roof disguised with netting and brush. No signs, no numbers, just a single light over a side door and vents. Cold breathed from the concrete like an open cellar in the hillside. The site plan in Anais's folder had called it Annex 3, a word that said nothing and meant everything. We slipped along the fence until we reached a service gate secured with a keypad. I tried it on instinct. 0000, 1234, 2580. Garbage codes that sometimes surprised you, but the red light blinked its small refusal. On the far side, a motion sensor clicked and a camera pivoted toward the trees. I tugged Anais back into the shadows. "We'll get caught," she whispered. "If we're lucky," I said. "Being caught makes them visible." Footsteps approached, not rushed, not bored, steady, practiced. A flashlight swept the fence. We lay flat on frosted moss, breath shallow. The beam paused on the gate, then traveled on. When it reached our patch of dark, it stuttered, lingered, and then moved away. The footsteps receded. The camera clicked back to its resting angle. We waited 5 minutes and then a slow 10. When we finally stood, my legs prickled with pins and needles. Anais took out her phone and zoomed in, shooting through the wire. The lens grabbed the little things you miss with eyes, a blue sticker half peeled from the doorframe, a stamped pallet that read Hushet and Amp, fills, turbines, a smear of dried mud on the keypad that looked like a thumb dragged across numbers. "We go to the gendarmerie tomorrow," she said. "Ask for an official work schedule. They'll laugh, but they'll confirm something. And tonight we talk to the engineer's sister." Her address was in a suburb of Grenoble, on a street lined with plane trees that shed bark like snakes. We rang the bell at 10:30, ready to apologize. A woman in a sweatshirt opened the door and stared at us, not surprised, just resigned. Behind her, a small boy slept on the couch with a blanket over his head. "You took your time," she said. "Come in, but don't say his name. My mother is awake." The engineer's sister was named Claire, and she looked like someone who had learned to sleep with the lights on. Her living room smelled of detergent and cold tomato soup. She gave us tea in mismatched mugs and sat on the arm of a chair. "You've been calling journals," Anais said gently. "I'm sorry we are late." "I sent emails," Claire said. "People sent back sympathy and links to support groups. You brought shoes with mud. That's better." She told us about her brother, Luke, who had studied in Lyon, interned at a turbine manufacturer, and taken a job with the consortium that ran the Vercors project. He made good money, bought their mother a dishwasher. 2 months before he vanished, he started taking late trains with no explanation. He stopped laughing at their mother's television shows. "Did he say he was scared?" I asked. Claire looked at the hallway, as if checking for listening doors. "He said he had seen a sinkhole with paperwork around it. He said if anything happened, I should give you this." She reached behind a book on the shelf and retrieved a flat tin that once held butter cookies. Inside lay the USB stick, a cheap plastic thing with a torn label. She gave it to me like you pass a candle. "We don't have a computer with a port," she said. "Everything is too new. I carry adapters the way climbers carry rope." On my laptop, the folder opened to scans. Contracts, inspection reports, expense claims, a PDF of a lease for a building never described by name but mapped with the same coordinates as the warehouse we had seen. In one corner, a draft email Luke had never sent. He had written, "The spillway is a cover. The annex hosts the test. The failures are off books." There were photographs too, a turbine rotor with burn marks, a whiteboard with dates and arcs, and the word so written large. "What's phase echo?" Anais asked. Claire shook her head. "He said not to Google anything here. He said it would make us visible." We left the originals in the tin under Claire's couch. When we stepped onto the street, the air had the sharp sting of midnight. A car idled at the corner. The driver looked down at his phone and then looked up. Even at that distance, I could see the profile of a radio mic clipped near his collar. "Gendarmerie?" I asked. "Private," Anais said. "Look at the plates." We didn't go home. We drove to the nearest Ibis budget, where the night clerk took passports without asking questions. In the room, Anais sat on the bed with her shoes still on and made 2 calls, one to a gendarme she trusted from a previous case, another to a lawyer in Lyon who spoke faster than a modem. They said, "If you have something, get it to a judge before the company gets to you." At 3 in the morning, someone knocked at our door. 3 measured knocks. We didn't move. After a minute, the knocks came again, slower. "We're not here," Anais whispered. At dawn we left by the fire exit and took the ring road toward the prefecture. In my rearview mirror a grey SUV kept its distance, then matched our lane changes like a polite shadow. I sped up. It sped up. When we reached the toll gate, it peeled away. I felt both relief and the heavy, unhelpful thought that sometimes predators don't rush. Sometimes they trot alongside and wait. The day felt rigged against simple answers. At the Tribunal Judiciaire, the guard checked our bags twice. Anais asked for the duty prosecutor and dropped 2 names that worked like keys. A young magistrate heard us out while we spread the USB files, the site plan, and the photos across his desk. He promised to request files by noon and cautioned us against grand gestures. When he reached the line about failures off books, he laced his fingers and said, "Allegations of criminal negligence require more than doors and night work." "We have a schedule," Anais said. She slid over a table marked Phase Echo, dates matching nights we'd seen trucks and darkness. Notes read, "Turbine resonance test, spillway closed." "If a spillway is closed, there's a waiver," he said. "Ask for it," I said. We left. The grey SUV reappeared in the mirror and held our speed as we crossed the river. Back in the valley, snow threatened. The dam's roar filled everything. We parked above the church and climbed toward the forestry road. The chain across the track was locked. Fresh tread marks scalloped the mud. Below, by the warehouse, 3 figures moved equipment under the side light. Then a 4th stepped into view. It was Anais. She spoke to a man in a black parka, pointed toward the treeline, then toward the hill. He wrote on a clipboard and went inside. She stayed, scanning the dark. "Anais," I said, though nobody stood beside me. Her breath smoked in small, even clouds. She walked toward the fence. "I told them you wouldn't try the gate again," she said. "I told the prosecutor too. If you were arrested here, they'd bury what you found. You're working with them." "I'm working with whoever will keep the files moving," she said. "Luke sent his material to 3 journalists. One joined the consortium's PR team and warned them at dawn. They're emptying the annex. Phase Echo isn't turbine research. It's an unpermitted breach drill, so officials can later say they didn't know. The annex hides the gear and personnel. The hikers on the posters? Seasonal workers using borrowed names. Luke tried to expose it and then he ran. Ran where? Someone used his card at a payage near Shobbery last week. The dam's voice changed, then wavered. Alarms answered, a three-note siren bouncing from rock to rock. Lights on the parapet flashed, and men hauled out equipment. A van spun on the mud, climbed to the chain, and stopped. What are they testing? I asked. Pressure waves and resonance, she said. How the valley rejects a mistake. The word "sir" wasn't a code. It was a bet. Snow salted my sleeve. The alarm cut off. The roar evened. Somewhere a floodgate adjusted with a groan. You used me, I said. I used your attention, she said. Foreign press creates pressure. That pressure buys time. If the prosecutor asks for the waiver and finds none, Phase Echo becomes foe. We stayed until the road went white and the annex blurred into hillside. It was possible to think nothing unusual had happened, that trucks and tests were what a dam in winter required. It was also possible to hear the valley returning our breath to us, to imagine it shaping our names in cold air. Between those two possibilities lay the kind of truth that keeps people alive long enough to testify. We chose the version that allowed movement.